You two in the room are the experts, but I would hypothesize, since we are an advisory committee and we act by consent, I don't think we need a quorum. But that's a non-elected official's 2 cents.
Okay, you are live. Okay,
I kind of think for us to deliberate or have action, we should.
you are live, just so.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay.
I'm trying to see if we're legal.
We'll make it ready to be done. You'll end the meeting.
Okay.
Are you chairing us?
No.
I propose that, Melinda, you chair.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody?
Do we know, well, all right. We are live. So I will call this meeting to order, and what I will do then is say we have a proposed agenda, which is just an update on the presentation to the Cleveland Township Planning Commission. We will look at highlights from the Housing Summit and perhaps discuss next steps for 2021. And have no action since there looks like there's 4 of us. So if we just look at these items with no action, we should be okay. So that would bring us to staff comments. Does staff have any comments?
I don't.
Okay. Have you taken note of who's the 4 that are available? Thank you. So that would be our roll call. All right, so we have an opportunity for public comment. So if anyone wants to make any public comment, they can call in 231-256-8109. So while we're waiting to see if anybody calls in, is there anyone that would like to make any comments? I hear none. So we may move along. If the phone rings and there's any public comment, we will take it at that time. So we have an update on the presentation made to the Cleveland Township Planning Commission. And who has that? Sharon? Lois?
Well, Sharon and I, we're both there.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Would you want me to jump in there, Sharon, or do you want to talk?
Go ahead, Lois.
Go ahead. Well, Cleveland Township is an outstanding group of people that are a leg up, I think, already on housing because of Yarrow Brown. Dean Manikis is the chair, and of course, his wife was our facilitator when we first started the Housing Action Committee group. And Kim Hayes is also a member, and she's with the Leelanau Conservancy. So, you know, they listened to us respectfully. And said that I think they're very aware of the housing issue. My suggestion, I believe, was to work with Glen Arbor Township because Glen Arbor Township is even more constrained in the amount of land that they could actually use for development. But they have the community of Glen Arbor that is, you know, lacking and struggling with the housing needs. So we planted that idea, and what else did we do, Sharon? It's been a couple of months, I think.
I know, I did pull out my notes. So the things that I think would be interesting to this group is Cleveland Township has already approved small houses.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a note that, and their definition. Yes?
Yes, oh good, you're going to get into it. What is the definition of a small house?
So their definition, my note, is 480 square feet.
That's excellent.
And just as a reminder to all of us, going back to what Cleveland said, as the township I represent is constrained by the park, 40% of Cleveland Township is in parkland. they still have some areas that are zoned 10-acre minimums. I don't have clear boundary definitions, but they do have a designated area along 667 and where it intersects with Century Road, which is an area that they are encouraging for some higher density housing. So that's
just north of Maple City then?
I believe so, Melinda.
I think
So it's
too.
something in the time that Lois and I had with them, we didn't do a deep dive into, but it might be something for this committee to learn more about and how we can foster things there. So those are things that from my notes, and as Lois said, they're very aware and of the need for housing and are, I think, regularly looking for opportunities to encourage housing.
Okay, did you?
Thank you both for doing that. You've done quite a few of those, haven't you?
We're
Yes.
a good team.
Thank you.
And I think for the record, I think we've been doing this over the committee over a collective period of time, but I think now we have hit every township.
Excellent. Okay. So is there anything else on an update to the Cleveland Township Planning Commission? Anything else? Okay. We have highlights from the Housing Summit. So who wants to start? Ty, go ahead.
I will. I enjoyed the summit, and I appreciated that they recognized our partnership with the Housing North group. I thought that I came right back and said that I thought we ought to have a couple of those programs presented here in Leelanau County. I especially liked the missing middle presentation. I thought that was outstanding. And I also was intrigued by the crowdfunding. I wasn't sure what I was going to learn on that, and I don't know if it's appropriate for Leelanau County or not, but I was intrigued by the crowdfunding. And I also appreciated the Community Land Trust presentation and the update on housing projects. So I left feeling really good, but I'd like the missing middle people and the Community Land Trust people to come and present for us.
Okay, who else? Lois, go ahead.
So I wasn't sure. I know Ty was there. I was there. Who else was? Okay, John was there.
I attended
Partly, I think I heard
yeah,
your
a
name.
variety of
Yeah.
sessions.
I didn't see other planning commissions from other townships, which, is unfortunate, I thought that would have been good. And I really thought the Zoom format worked very well because all of the sessions are taped. You can go back and link in and look at them again for reference. And because of their being taped, they would be easily maybe usable for presentations. Even just the first intro, which was a nice overview about housing. It was well presented and seemed concise and just a good format. And the different funding sources, which can be pretty complicated. So it's nice to have them on a tape where you can go back and find the resources, the individuals you might want to talk to. Again, there was Ty said missing middle housing. There's still seems like a lot of emphasis on freestanding owner-occupied homes. And the only way we can really get anywhere on this huge number that we need to build is rentals. We need to build hundreds of rentals, and it seems daunting. And how do you build hundreds of rentals and yet have them feel like it's still a neighborhood community? So people aren't living in boxes that don't have any relationship to each other or don't feel that they have some buy-in to their community, so that it's cared for. There's always more.
Okay, all right. Is there anybody else that attended the housing summit that would like to talk about it?
This is
John?
John O'Neill. There were some presentations that were helpful, such as the crowdfunding was interesting, and bits and pieces here and there. There was one section on adjusting to what's coming in terms of the depression we're in right now. But there really wasn't much, and people are going ahead with their market studies and everything, assuming that we're going to have the same kind of demand, or even if we have the same demand, that people are going to have the same ability to pay for housing. And I think we're in a different world, and I think all the assumptions that we're operating on are so much wishful thinking at this juncture. Marketplace, which is on NPR, says there are 3 million, I think more than 3 million mortgages, federally backed mortgages, that are in forbearance and voluntary forbearance, I think they call it. And if something's not done, that's gonna run out fairly soon, and you're going to have a significant portion of those people who are not going to be able to make up what they owe, even if it's put on the back end of their mortgage. They're going to end up in foreclosure. And I've said this many times, and it just doesn't seem to get through. And I'm really quite frustrated. We cannot build our way out of the housing crisis we have if we don't preserve the existing stock of affordable homes. And this is a very fundamental idea. I mean, if we build, I hope you remember 10 years ago when you'd open the Enterprise and there were 4 or 5 pages of foreclosure notices. Just an astonishing number across the board. But a lot of those were lost to, those were affordable homes, and they were lost to investment properties or things that went back into rentals until they could be flipped or sold to syndicates. A lot of them were lost as affordable homes forever. And we're just dreaming if we think we can build our way out of the. Don't get me wrong, it's important to continue building, but unless we couple that with preserving the existing stock, I don't think we're not going to make any progress. In fact, we're going to be going backwards. And I think both the session on the effect of the COVID-19 thing and what's coming down the pipeline in terms of foreclosure prevention, I felt that they weren't quite adequate or understanding of this is. I saw a program on Portugal, no, on Chile. No, I'm sorry, on Peru, surfing in Peru. They know if on Monday there's a wave in Hawaii, big waves in Hawaii, that they will get to Peru on Friday or Saturday. Well, we know right now there's a big wave in Hawaii. We know that there are all those 3 million homes and more that are in forbearance. And those are going to, many of those are going to go to foreclosure. And we know that only half of those people have recovered their jobs. If that many of the people, if the people in forbearance have indeed regained their jobs. So we are headed to a real disaster. And I think we're whistling Dixie or whistling in the dark if we don't prepare for that. So I was disappointed that reality, which is clearly seen by many economists, is not being taken into account by those of us in the affordable housing world. I think it's one thing to be idealistic and hopeful, but it's another thing to levitate away from reality and kind of try to build our castles on clouds. I know I sound like a broken record, but I feel like was it Demosthenes who warned of the Persians coming and no one listened, or the little Dutch boy who warned of the leaking dikes? I'm just concerned that it's not being heard, and I'm putting together something to respond to that. But I know I can't do it by myself. Whatever I come up with, that this has to be taken very seriously. And every agency I've heard of either thinks the government's going to take care of it, or that it's outside their purview. And we know the last time when this hit, when there was a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House and a Democratic governor, that there was some foreclosure prevention, but still 9 million people lost their homes. It really was not, they bailed out the banks much more effectively than the homeowners. Now it's likely we'll have a split Congress, and there won't be huge programs coming to save homeowners. That's about all I have to say.
John, you and I have had conversation before. I know the last time we talked, you were irritated, I think, with my saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. But I want to press you a little bit, because I believe you're right. There's a problem coming. I don't know what Leelanau County or the Housing Action Group or what county government in general can do about it. And other than be advocates, other than advocate for relief from our federal and state leaders, what can we do?
Well, the bully pulpit is one thing. I think that the planning department is very circumscribed in terms of what they're allowed to do. I'm guessing that they could be applying for funds that they could be eligible for if the county commission gave them that authority. And of course, we have to remember that preserving this chunk of affordable housing is not an individual problem of each individual homeowner. It's something that affects the entire community. And we just saw this in the presentation last time. It affects the whole community. Businesses can't get enough workers. Schools don't have enough kids in them, et cetera, et cetera. It's just something that affects the whole community. So this is not a special group that we're trying to help. So the Planning Commission can be authorized to pursue funding for foreclosure prevention. I don't know if the law allows you to put people's taxes in abeyance if they're having trouble, but if that is allowed, that could be considered. When I was the director of the Benzie Housing Council, of course, we were hit with those waves of foreclosure starting around 2007. And we developed a program that had two strategies. One is, and this was only in one case at that time because the real estate market tanked, but a family was losing their house, and we actually bought the house for the cost of their mortgage, and we turned around and we leased it to them until they got back on their feet and repaired their credit and were able to qualify for a mortgage. On the main strategy that we used, that without any funding to begin with, we just said this has to be done, so we did it. We recruited realtors and bankers to negotiate with the banks, to negotiate loan modifications and other things. And these bankers and the realtors knew what they were talking about. We didn't have to train them regarding the mechanics of mortgages and the real estate deals. They already knew that. But we trained them in terms of how to negotiate with the banks. And we saved, just on a homemade program, we saved about 55 homes in a 5-county area from foreclosure. So the first thing that has to be done is a commitment to do it, and then pursue the ideas I just put out there and pursue whatever else is out there. Another thing is just letting the word get out. Let people know what resources there are in the county for people. There are funds available from senior services for emergency needs. There are There's some foreclosure prevention counseling from the Community Action Agency in Traverse City, which covers our area. So also letting people know what resources are out there. All those things are important. Does that begin to address your concern, Ty?
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So serve as a clearinghouse for
The
information.
clearinghouse, authorize the planning department to seek funding where they can. I don't know if you're allowed to, I think you're allowed to put in abeyance or forgive the taxes of people who are financially distressed. All those are things that could help. And then the clearinghouse.
Thank
I
you.
can write those up and send them in if it'll help with the minutes.
Well, you know, that's interesting, and I haven't seen these statistics, but it's astonishing if we have that many mortgages behind, and I don't doubt it. I mean, you can't close businesses and shutter businesses and put people out of work for this long and not have some issues. So I'm afraid that is that just the beginning, you know? But I'd like to see Leelanau County's numbers if at all possible. I mean, that would be, I think what our concern would be is what's the situation in Leelanau, and I wouldn't know how to get those numbers.
I don't know that anyone is collecting them at this point. I think you could survey banks, which primarily service mortgages. Most of those are not held in portfolio. But you could say to them, how many people do you have who are in forbearance? And know that a high percentage of those are going to be in foreclosure when that forbearance, which I think lasts a total of a year, when that goes away. Look back at old copies of the Enterprise and see how, you know, there would be dozens and dozens of properties listed every single issue. I'm sure it was good for the Enterprise's bottom line, but it was a disaster for the community. And again, let me emphasize, it's coming. We don't necessarily need to know exactly how big it'll be. Probably whatever it is, it's going to exceed our resources. But if we can make a significant dent in the houses that we're going to lose, if we can, the other possibility is to, if the county doesn't do it, at least participate in the effort to build a fund to buy distressed properties from foreclosure, and then put those in as rental properties until people can afford to buy them.
So
You can buy a $200,000 piece of property for $90,000 on a foreclosure sale. You know, I mean, the savings are amazing.
all right, so quickly, because I heard this mentioned a couple times, does anyone want to just state in a nutshell what excited them about the project?
In the Zoom meeting
Lois,
for
you're not-
housing action.
Lois, you're not muted. Thank you. So, what excited you about the crowdfunding, just quickly?
Me?
Anyone who's, a couple different people mentioned crowdfunding.
Well, I talked a lot. I liked it, but I'll let somebody else, because I've talked a lot.
I went to a session, and there's a development on A Street that was partially paid for by people making small investments into the development, and it was a all-inclusive development with residential and recreational and small business offices. But they got funding from a lot of people not giving money but investing in it to make sure that they had enough funds to go
Okay.
forward.
Interesting, okay. And then how about the missing middle? Did you also speak about that one?
Yeah, and Sharon, Lois, you mentioned the missing middle presentation too, didn't you?
Yes. I was going to look for that book on the missing middle housing in communities. That seemed important. Now, where was I? Got that phone call in the middle. I lost my thought.
how did he define the missing middle?
Okay, back to my notes, let's see.
Yeah.
Oh, you were talking about common ground, that the development on 8th Street, which is,
On 8th Street, yes.
yeah, interesting building.
Okay.
All right, Ty,
Yes,
the missing middle are homes that are on small lots. They are duplexes. They are small apartment buildings. And you know, as far as we would be concerned, these would be probably, you know, homes that that employees could afford, and homes that lower income people, you know, would have a fair number of lower income people. So that's anything, I'd say it's anything below 4 stories to duplexes and row houses.
and some granny flats, I think he referenced granny flats or
Right, yep, yep.
2 homes on a single lot.
Right,
Yep.
right. So
Okay.
cluster housing with,
And when you do that, you lower the cost, you know.
Exactly. Mhm.
and some of the things he showed, if you just drove by, you would think it was a single family house, but there might be 4 residential units in them. So
Yeah,
looks like
yeah,
looks
he-
like Rick has been going through his notes.
I think the other thing is some of that housing, it blends in with the neighborhood, as you mentioned, so that it's not going to raise the hackles of the people who are interested in NIMBYism. You say, oh, well, this might help the neighborhood.
Well, it
Right.
goes back to that idea of form-based zoning, which Sutton's Bay, their zoning ordinance in the village was supposedly form-based, but then they started putting too much language in it and muddied the whole water up on form-based zoning, that you're not so interested in what goes on inside a structure as you are in maintaining the scale and density of structures within a zoning district. So if you had, you know, allowed up to 2,500 to 3,000 square feet on a property, why couldn't you break that up into smaller units inside? And why would the neighbors care? You know, it should look like it fits into the neighborhood and not be concerned about what happens inside. I think that's what they were talking about. One of the things they said was 30% of households are single person occupants, which we're probably finding is the case, as our senior residents want to downsize from big houses and move into a smaller area. And certainly with employees, you know, your first apartment, a studio apartment is very important. You need that smaller space.
I was struck by the, in the missing middle presentation about how gorgeous some of the homes were. And you couldn't tell that they were 4-person or 2-person or 6-unit homes. They looked like, as you mentioned, fit right into the neighborhood. It almost looked like they belonged, some of them in Virginia, in the hills of Virginia. They were just beautiful homes, but housed economically.
Good, yeah. All right, well, good. I'm really pleased that we got so much out of this. Rick, did you have anything that you wanted to add or
No, I'm
Say
sorry,
before we
I was
start.
late because I had a computer problem and I had to end up using my wife's computer. One of the talks that I thought was very fascinating was on Thursday, and that was on community land trusts, where a nonprofit organization buys the land and then leases lots for people to build homes on. And the homeowner can then have the appreciation of the developer, the house, but loses the appreciation of the land, but it dramatically reduces the cost of housing. And it's a fairly complex business, but 2 of the nonprofit organizations in Grand Rapids, Dwelling Place, and I'm blocking on the name of the other one, are starting into this in Grand Rapids and Kent County and some of the surrounding counties, Ottawa County, and I think even getting up towards Muskegon in doing this. So it's starting at the state of Michigan as well. The gentleman from Dwelling Place that was on the program was a little less knowledgeable about it than a gentleman named Michael Brown, who comes from someplace in the East and is a partner in Burlington Associates that has gotten this going in several places. But that struck me as a potential idea. But I was also very much impressed with the idea of in the missing middle of putting either multiple apartments neatly done in a single structure, or putting multiple small homes on a single lot by placing them one behind another such that they're barely visible from the street and not changing the apparent character of the neighborhood, but using land more efficiency, particularly in urban areas or even perhaps in village areas. Either of those are methods of making housing costs less for workforce and other people with limited income, and still gives the occupants some potential for financial gain over time in the property they're living in. And I thought those were both ideas that we might want to try to pursue. Not that we're a business, but perhaps we could interest either nonprofit organizations or real estate developers in our area in looking at those. Obviously, it's going to require some changes in zoning ordinances to accomplish that. So there's some political muscle that has to be created to get that as a change in the community.
Yes,
This
Lois.
is John O'Neill. I
Lois,
work.
John, oh, just a second. Lois had her hand up, so I'll call on Lois.
So I have my energy hat on, and when I hear that we are going to build small homes of 475 square feet, to me, it always seems that if you're going to build a structure that small, you're better off to put them together in a 4-unit format. So you have less exterior wall space. You know, you're losing energy through the exterior walls of a structure. So if you put 4 together under one roof in a box, you automatically have half as many exterior walls on those units. You understand what I'm saying?
No, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But one also has to recognize the preferences of people.
Yeah.
Right.
I like
There's
it,
a lot of
but I don't know
groups,
how close to you I want to live.
Well, maybe I think we can talk about these concepts, but we know when we look at the illustrations that come with these presentations at the Housing Summit and you see attractive buildings,
Yes.
it's hard to get the planning commissions to visualize it unless you show them a picture and say, what do you like better? Do you like the way this looks or this looks? And then they go, well, that's not bad. Then you're kind of moving in the right direction.
No,
Yeah, I think you're right. The problem might just be, as I was thinking, trying to slip it into a neighborhood. I think we might slip a small single-family home in a neighborhood with, 2 cars, 2 cars. But, if you suddenly slip a roof in there that's got 4 homes and 8 cars, 4 to 8 cars, the neighborhood might not go so much for that. But that doesn't mean there isn't a place for it somewhere. And it's interesting when you start thinking of, the opportunities. You mentioned Cleveland's 40% national park. That's land all just sitting there. But is there any lot on there that's possible that you could do something like that, or even the Conservancy property, they're getting to be a large landowner in the county, and so there's some potential for who might be those, they might be those land trust people, so that's all very interesting. So, all right, is there anything else from the Housing Summit that we want to cover before we move on?
If I can just talk a little bit on the not the land bank, but land trusts. Before the Great Recession hit, we were out, Benzie Housing Council and Homestretch were working with Michael Brown and Burlington Associates to develop a land trust. And the issue then was that property values were increasing by about 25% a year. And the idea was not only to preserve the investment, the public investment that goes into building affordable housing on an ongoing basis, but also to moderate the cost of that, the inflation of the cost of that housing. We never saw any zoning issues that were necessary. I guess it's none of the government's business what the ownership structure of a piece of property is. But what I think one issue was the taxing structure. And I think we did discuss the idea of taxing at a lower rate because the property owner doesn't own the land. He's leasing the land, or she's leasing the land, or they're leasing the land. And trying to convince the assessor that that's important. But the main idea behind the land trust is, okay, you know, the government or this nonprofit, whatever it is, invests a lot of money, you know, anywhere from $100,000 or more in building an affordable housing unit. And if you want to keep building affordable housing units, you either have to come up with that every time you build a new unit, or you have a land trust, the purpose of which is to make sure that owner can use that house as though they own it, because they do own the house. I mean, they can use it for the purpose of living in it. But when they go to sell it, it has to be sold back to the land trust, so the land trust can make it available to another income eligible buyer. And therefore, in 10 years, when those people want to move on, the nonprofit or the government doesn't have to invest another huge chunk of money to provide that unit of affordable housing. It's already preserved, and there's a formula that allows the homeowners to accumulate some equity, a fair share of equity, but also preserves the affordability of that house. And I think one of the biggest things that we found was educating the buyers as to the advantages of this. Now, it really lost steam. The Benzie Housing Council was forced to close because of the foreclosure crisis, and Homestretch decided to dissolve the land trust. I think they may have put deed restrictions on those properties. Northern Homes, I think, has a land trust, and I think they stuck with it and were able to stay with it. And that's correct, right? And so one of the issues was the property values then began to plummet, and but I'm not sure why that would affect the viability of a land trust. You know, it affects your ability to sell houses, but I'm not sure why it would affect the viability of the particular land trust. You might modify for a time being your lot lease prices. But Ty, I have one question. Could the or Melinda, maybe you know the answer to this. Could the county say any properties that are in the land bank that are going to be used for affordable housing, so sold to Habitat or to Reach or whoever's building these houses, any of those properties have to remain affordable, either through a land trust or deed restrictions? Can you put that restriction on the sale?
Go ahead, Ty.
We had a small amount of land bank involvement in the Reach Homes in Northport while we were building, and we did build in a future affordability requirement for those. I think 7 years, people couldn't make money, and then after 7, then they can begin to recoup some profits.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a problem I have with Habitat. Their repurchase option only lasts for 10 years. So after 10 years, it just gets dumped back into the market. And, you know, they built houses in Traverse City. They got to be worth $400,000 each on the open market. Anyway, that's, I mean, is that a policy, Ty, or just something you did in that particular instance?
That was a Reach Board agreement with the land bank folks.
Well, I mean, it might be good to make that.
And our donor. And our donor.
It might be a good thing to make that a policy.
I think it might change from situation to situation on some other ones we've done through the land bank, but we could probably have John Gallagher speak to that sometime for us. And I know it wasn't the land bank, but we had a similar similar thing, I believe it was over in Empire County, owned the land underneath and built the homes. But the problem was we couldn't control who bought those, and I think they ended up being bought just mostly as second homes, and so it kind of wasn't exactly all we hoped it would be. But I think since we got some more things figured out, so good. Okay, well, we've got, I'm not sure what we can do about next steps for 2021.
Both has her hand up.
Yeah, I have a lot to say. So going back to the first presentation at the Housing Summit on Northwest Michigan housing shortages and the basics was what they covered in that short presentation. Number one is zoning, we know that. Number two is development costs, that's the basis in land. And there are opportunities here with land trusts to maybe mitigate some of that. But third is short-term rentals. And I'm, look out my window at a small home across from me that just turned over. The long-term tenant bought a house in the UP because the landlord is threatening to change the house into a short-term rental. And I can't get Sutton's Bay Village to get excited about the fact that we're just losing houses. They're leaving the market. And I don't know what you do about that. We all stand up and clamor and say, this is wrong, but now you've got to figure out a way to either disincentivize the owner of the property so they don't turn it into a short-term, don't turn it into a short-term rental. Housing North had the best idea with legislative changes to change the taxing rate so that rentals that stay in a long-term rental basis will be taxed based on the homestead rate rather than non-homestead. Well, that seemed like a solid idea. Anyway, depressing to watch.
Yeah. I believe it was at the Planning Commission, we had some discussion about the short-term rentals. We had heard quite a bit about it. There's got to be some way to figure out some sort of formula along that line, because what we don't want to do is hurt the very young families that are trying to buy a home in Leelanau County, and to be able to afford to do that, they do the short-term rental for a few years until they can get the mortgage under control, and then they move into the homes as their own. So it's a tool they're using to actually be a homeowner in the county with their young families. And, so it could disincentivize them by, putting them in a really higher tax bracket or something, too. So there's got to be some sort of balance that we can work out. Maybe it can be done as each township or village or whichever incorporation could do a time limit or a time frame that it could work. I don't know, I suppose I could work that out. All right, so for next steps in 2021, do we want to, was it Ty that you mentioned bringing some of those speakers in to talk to Leelanau County and talk to some of the townships or planning commissions, or do we want to maybe request that for something that can happen in 2021?
Yeah, I'm not sure, a couple, it looks like, for example, most of us saw the missing middle, so maybe if we were to bring that person in, we'd want to bring it in for the planning commission and our group. But I had talked to Trudy about doing that. I also talked to Trudy about, we need to keep going, but I don't know that we need to keep going every month. I think every other month could, and then continue our work outside, because I think as we see people dropping off, we need to make sure that we don't lose people because they think we're not doing enough. And I think we have, I'd rather have 6 really jam-packed agendas than 12 and searching for things to do. And then on off meeting months, we can do our advocacy work or our township connections or something like that.
And
Do you want to discuss that in December?
I was going to say, this is Sharon, and if you looked at my notes, I had down every other month suggestion also. And I don't know what you talked with Trudy about, Ty, but I'm wondering, do we need to get a new contact with the missing middle speaker, or I'm wondering if we could reuse what was presented at the summit. And I'm happy to ask Yarrow that, I mean, to see if we can reuse that presentation in the county.
I think that'd be helpful.
I mean, the downside is it's not maybe customized, but perhaps what we could do is use the presentation and then just have him live, mimic what they did at the summit.
Well, I was so impressed with him and his presentation that I did a Google search for his book, and it's still available. It's a kind of hefty cost, but he also has authored some journal articles, so maybe we can find some additional things that he has been involved in that could help us, because we really have to do something.
Right, I agree. So I think that should be an action item for us, is to figure out how to disseminate this missing middle information throughout the county.
We'll discuss that maybe in December then. Look at our schedule in December and discuss that in December. And okay.
And then I would also offer for us to consider, I'll use an old-fashioned word, but maybe we do like a quarterly newsletter. To John's point about the, letting people know about resources, but I think we could use our off time to take some highlights, just a one-pager that can electronically go out to all these planning commissions that we've met with and say, here's what's happening. Here's what's happening legislatively. Here's what's happening in our county. Here's what's happening, nothing fancy, but to keep housing in front of all of us. So I would offer that as another something for us to talk about for next year.
Regarding the book on, I think it was The Missing Middle, Ty, recall that the author was offering a discount for attendees to the conference, if you remember.
All right. Yes. Okay. Any other business that anyone wants to discuss?
I want to thank the Housing Action Committee for extending a scholarship for me to attend the conference that came along with the $1,000 donation that we made to Housing North. Very much
Partnership, John.
partnership. Okay. Thanks. I very much appreciated that, and I did attend every session, so I made good use of it. And finally, Ty, I put together a list of things that the county can do that I'll forward to you and to Trudy's email address, so they can be included in the minutes.
Well, why don't you send it to Melinda as well?
Sure. I don't know if I have her. I'll find her email address.
Yeah, you can find one.
And we'll get that into the minutes for,
Excellent. Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. Thanks a lot, John, for that, because that was the idea and when we pushed for the partnership. And so I'm really excited about all the attendance. It's been very well supported, and so that's really good. Okay, so next we have just the minutes. Has anybody looked over the minutes? I did. They look very well done. I don't see anything to change or anything. I think, I'm not sure about how many,
do
we
we
have
need
6 of
a
us.
motion to
I think
approve?
we can, we have 6 of us.
I move we approve the minutes as we're.
I second it
distributing.
with the provision that we add another L to John O'Neill's name.
All right. So with that change, no, I don't see any discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Aye. Opposed? So that's 6-0. Okay, so another opportunity for public comments. So if anybody's watching and would like to weigh in, the number is 231-256-109. So while we're waiting to see if anybody calls in, are there any other closing comments that any of the committee members would like to make?
Well, I'm looking at Dr. Foster, and I'm envious because I know that outside that door is Lake Michigan, and it is 90 degrees in here.
Really?
Our HVAC system is being repaired, so it's hot, isn't it?
It is. He only exaggerated a tiny bit. I think it was like 85 when I opened the door the second time. It's hot.
Huh.
But I'm envious also. I snuck up to Lake Michigan the other day and walked the beach. It was beautiful. Lois?
Hope they get the HVAC going. All that money invested?
They're working on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think it'll cool off by the end of the week. You won't be quite that hot in the county center.
Yeah, we're going to be sad then, though. All right, I hear no public comments, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Melinda, do you still use M. Lautner at co.leelanau.mi.u?